What is active listening for the listeners who maybe are not as familiar with it?
Thomas Gordon also came up with this cool thing, which he called 12 roadblocks to communication.
Okay.
And a lot of companies use it for to be able to, in trainings for like how, their employees will get along with each other.
Got it.
But he basically says the most respectful way, if someone's sharing something with you, people automatically jump to, there's things that people instinctively think will be helpful, like telling the person what to do, giving them advice, sharing something that that was even worse than what they're going through. But just reflecting back that you understand the feelings that the person is experiencing is really the most respectful way to communicate with people.
Uh-huh.
And that, especially for a parent and child, a lot of times as soon as your child tells you a problem, you want to solve it. And it comes from empathy.
Right.
But really, to the child, it will make them shut down. It's like a roadblock to communication because they don't want you telling them what to do, or
they just want to feel heard.
Right.
Welcome back to another episode of the Jews Next Door. We have the incredible opportunity to speak to Rochelle Garfield, who is a speech language pathologist, a dyslexia lecturer, and an author, and has been giving parenting courses here in Houston. It's amazing to be here in Houston with you. And really, thank you so much for agreeing to talk and to tell us about your parenting style, this incredible style. I'm so excited to learn more about it. And really, it's such a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be on your podcast.
Amazing. So let's get right into it. I've heard that you have this very unique parenting style. So where did that, what was the Masorah for that? Where did that come from?
So I have really an amazing and unique mother. I really don't know anyone else like her. She was always and is always so positive. She only saw the positive in us, and everything was always good.
Wow.
She never liked telling us what to do. We didn't have any rules.
Wow. What a life like to grow up with that. Yeah. That's incredible.
She would never use the word punish. She wouldn't even say that word, or consequences.
Was there discipline in the house, or?
So it's interesting because, we always wanted to, make her happy or do what she would like. We really respected and appreciated her. And so it really.
Where did that come from? Where did that innate want to make her happy?
I think because she, treated us with so much respect, we couldn't not reciprocate.
Wow. That's awesome.
And, my mother always tells us that all of this came from her mother. That her mother and my grandmother was this very, very unique woman. Also only saw the positive in everyone, always wanted to bring out the best in people, loved talent, loved helping bring out talent in people. And there was all these stories about what an amazing mother she was. And all of my mother's siblings and all my siblings and all my cousins, I think, really feel very passionately about parenting. And I really think it started with my grandmother.
Wow, that's incredible.
So I feel really lucky to have that. And I always knew something was different about how my mother was as a mother. And I just always wished I could be like that.
Wow, that's really special. And then how did you come to develop that into a style and into a course that you teach?
So I couldn't even articulate the things my mother did, but I just knew how much I liked it and I wanted to be like her. My mother has a sister, Leah Trank. I don't know if you heard of the book, Just Love Them.
Yeah, of course.
So that was my uncle, David Trank.
Wow.
And
that's yichus. That's serious.
So you could see that whole style is very similar to, all this positive approach. So my aunt, she was the oldest girl in the family. And she said that she always, idolized her mother, looked up to her and thought she was going to be a mother like her. But she has a very structured personality. And all of a sudden she was having kids and she wasn't like her mother. And it was so disappointing to her.
Wow.
So she signed up to take this parenting course. And she felt like the parenting course put words to the things that her mother did.
Really?
And that it was able to help her become like her mother, even though it was not really natural to her.
No way. And then so she developed it into her.
So she's been doing this parenting course, teaching it for over 40 years. And she does one-on-one parenting coaching. So maybe 7 or 8 years ago, my husband wanted her to come to Houston and give a parenting lecture. And he kept trying to convince her and she wasn't agreeing. And then finally, after a lot of asking her to come, she said, you know what, why don't I just train Rochelle in my parenting thing? And then she could give my courses in Houston. It'll be much better.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So it was like a gift. It was the greatest gift ever. She didn't charge me. She met with me for a year for an hour a week.
Wow.
2 years actually for an hour a week.
Oh my gosh.
And she gave me all her classes and everything, all her thoughts and anecdotes behind it and how things she's learned over the years. And then she told me she'll supervise me for the first year that I was giving the classes. So I would meet with her after every class and I would go over it and tell her things that came up.
That's amazing.
And it was really a tremendous gift that she gave me.
Okay. So I guess we got to have 2 years of podcasts now to go through this whole approach. So I guess in a more succinct way, what is the approach? What's the basics?
So
of the approach?
I think it's really cool. And the more I learned about it, it's each time I teach it, I become more amazed by it. And I really feel like I learn more things, which is one of the best things about teaching it. Like I really keep getting to know it more and more.
Totally.
So it's really based off of this course by somebody named Dr. Thomas Gordon. So he was a psychologist in the 60s. He was a colleague of Carl Rogers. He's known as one of the most eminent thinkers in psychology. He came up with client-centered therapy. So this Thomas Gordon was working with Carl Rogers, and he felt like we were learning all these things about human behavior and relationships and communication style and conflict resolution. But he thought that why aren't we applying that to the relationships between parents and children?
Interesting.
Like for some reason, people still put parents and children in a different category. They didn't think of it as relationships, other relationships. And so he took all these concepts that Carl Rogers had developed and applied it to parenting. And in 1962, he came out with this course called Parent Effectiveness Training. It's called PET.
Yeah. That's funny.
And it was really revolutionary at the time. It was, at this point, I feel like there are lots of courses that are based off of him, but he was really the first. This was recognized as the first skills-based parenting course ever created. It was like As Things Were. And it's still going strong today. There like over 1 million people have taken his course in 50 different countries. They still train in it. And many of the parenting programs today are really based off of concepts that he developed.
Wow. So your aunt had taken that.
Right. So it's
and
all
developed
from that.
it into.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's really, to me, it's so brilliant.
So what are the basics of it? Take us through it a little bit.
Okay, so Carl Rogers came up with this concept in therapy that was very new then, and he called it reflective listening. So that he said that when you're interacting with your client, if you just reflect back the feelings that they're sharing, it helps them work through their own problems. So,
meaning like, for example, like if someone's like expressing how frustrated they are, be like, I understand that you're frustrated right now.
Right.
Does that mean that's it? Or
like you sound like you're very frustrated about what you went through with your neighbor. And then the person might say, no, I'm not frustrated. I am, I'm angry. And they say, okay, you're more than frustrated. You're really angry. And as they talk through it.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
There's some really cool videos watching him do therapy. And you see how he just reflects what the person's saying and then the person resolves the issue.
Wow. Okay.
So one of the big things, Thomas Gordon had a few things that he developed that are really, to me, it's just, once you know it, you can't like go back and not know it, but it's communication style, conflict resolution. So in communication, he has this thing called the behavior window where he takes different behaviors that a child will do. You put it into this window, there are different categories. And based on what category you put it in is how you would respond. It sounds complicated, but so one of the first, if there's he has something called a child-owned problem. So if it's something that's not affecting you, for example, your child didn't study for a test.
Okay.
So you might want them to be successsul in the test, but it's not your problem. It's really your child's
their
problem.
Responsibility.
Right. Where they get in an argument with a friend. So when it's a child-owned problem, he came up with this term, active listening. And if you heard that term, he's the one that came up with it.
Wow, that's legit.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So he has this, like Carl Rogers did, he said, if you put something in this child-owned category of a problem, then all you should be doing is active listening. So. Oh,
meaning because it's on them. So you should just be actively listening to what they're.
So you're showing them that you're validating what they're going through. You're becoming connected to them and they're learning how to solve their own problem.
So meaning that's this concept of like reflective, meaning reflecting to them but it's not, in that case, it's not what they're feeling. It's more like what they should have done differently or not even.
No, just what they're feeling. You're just reflecting back what they're feeling.
So meaning the child didn't study for the test.
Right.
And then you're reflecting what back
So
to
maybe
them?
they'll come in and they'll say, I'm so mad. I got a 58 on this stupid test. And you say, well, you're really frustrated. You got a 58. And they say, yeah, it was a dumb test. And you say, and you didn't even feel like it. Yeah. And you had to study so much and it wasn't even worth it. Like, and as you're going through the conversation, you're letting them hear what they're feeling and helping them go through and work through their own problem.
Working through it. Interesting. Okay. So the first component of this parenting style is more so reflecting back to them what they're saying. And is this only when it's a child-based problem?
Right.
That's only that.
Right.
Okay. So that's one of the categories.
Right.
Okay. So what's another category?
Okay. Then he has parent-owned problems.
Okay.
So if the child's doing something that's bothering you, it's affecting you. It might not be, the child doesn't care. They, come into the house and they leave the kitchen messy and then they walk
yelling,
out.
Or whatever. It doesn't bother them at all. But,
right. Like they don't care if the kitchen's messy, but now they came in and now you have a messy kitchen.
Sure.
So this is another thing that he came up with that you probably heard of, and that's I statements.
Yeah, sure.
So that's his invention also.
Wow. Okay. So for those who are not familiar with it, why don't you play it out a little bit?
So he for when it's something that's affecting you, he came up with this term called using an I statement. So you're saying, when you left the kitchen messy, I felt really bad because then I had to work harder to clean it up.
Right.
So you're just saying how you feel. And one of the really interesting things is that he doesn't, in the I statement, you don't tell the child how to fix it.
You don't even suggest, what do you think we could do? It's just, you just say, I'm frustrated because I came in and the kitchen was so messy. And that's it. You just leave it there.
Right.
And you just let the child deal with those emotions.
Right. And it's very powerful because a lot of times, as soon as you tell someone what to do, it's a natural human instinct to get defensive or to not want to do it. And so...
So by not telling them what to do, you're kind of just like presenting, this is how I'm feeling right now. And that's it.
And another really cool thing that it's doing is really teaching your child empathy. Like you're really helping them. Like sometimes it's very hard for parents to come up with an I statement. They just want to say, you need to clean up the kitchen. It's not about me.
Right.
It's about you learning to be responsible.
So it's like a total switching of the language they use with the children.
But really, when you can show them that their actions affect you, Thomas Gordon says that's how you're creating empathy. They're learning that their actions make someone feel better.
That's like the purest form of modeling, of really modeling your own emotions to them. Being able to also the ability to express it in a healthy way. Right.
And sometimes for some parents, it gives them a way to express a feeling they didn't know how to express.
Wow. Okay. So we have parent-owned issues.
Yeah.
Children-owned issues. Yeah. Are there other categories?
And then he has parent and child-owned
What does that mean?
problem. So when there's a conflict that, let's say you want the child to clean the kitchen and your child doesn't want to clean the kitchen. They want to go out and play. It's not just that they don't care. It's getting in the way
of something else they want to do. Okay.
So this was also something that he felt this was the climax of his whole method. Some parents, this one's harder to like really master, but it's really cool if you can get to this. But he had this whole system of conflict resolution. So you really have to get good at the I statements and the active listening because they're all connected to that. But then he has this method of working it out. And it's really respectful because you're taking the child's perspective into account.
So what does that mean?
So you wouldn't say, well, I don't care if you have a soccer game. The kitchen needs to be cleaned. Clean it right now. And there's nothing to talk about.
Right.
You would say, oh, it's really hard for you. You want to go out and play soccer. And the child will say, yeah. And you'll say, I'm having a really hard time because I can't be the only one cleaning the kitchen. And then without going into too many details, but together you brainstorm ideas and you only agree on something that you both agree on, that you're both happy with.
So it's kind of like using all the tools together.
Exactly.
Fascinating. How does the active listening play a role here? Meaning, explain that. Meaning, I understand what active listening is, but I guess maybe first, let's go back actually. What is active listening for the listeners who maybe are not as familiar with it?
Thomas Gordon also came up with this cool thing, which he called 12 roadblocks to communication.
Okay.
And a lot of companies use it for to be able to, in trainings for like how, their employees will get along with each other.
Got it.
But he basically says the most respectful way, if someone's sharing something with you, people automatically jump to, there's things that people instinctively think will be helpful, like telling the person what to do, giving them advice, sharing something that that was even worse than what they're going through. But just reflecting back that you understand the feelings that the person is experiencing is really the most respectful way to communicate with people. And that, especially for a parent and child, a lot of times, as soon as your child tells you a problem, you want to solve it. And it comes from empathy.
Right.
But really, to the child, it will make them shut down. It's like a roadblock to communication, because like they don't want you telling them what to do, or
they just want to feel heard.
Right. And maybe, or they could get into a crutch where they need you to tell them what to do.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So the active listening is actively listening to what they're saying and repeating back to them what you heard them say.
And more than that, is to be really, really, truly active listening, you have to reflect back their feeling.
So it's, okay. So not just what you heard, but also the aspects of the emotions that are going on for them, not mean nothing about yourself at all.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it. So this model of when you're, trying to come up with it together. So in that model, the parent is both telling their own emotions, because it's like active listening, but with the I statement,
right,
of saying how it made them feel, but it's also, here, I understand what you feel.
Right.
Okay.
And if the child doesn't feel understood, so the first point is the child has to feel understood, or they're not going to be able to move further.
And that's something that the parents should even say, like, do you feel like you're being understood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That could be an important part.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So this is a whole thing.
Right.
So it's really about switching your language, and also just how you what's your first approach that you take whenever trying to.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Sounds good. Are there other components to it, or?
I mean, those are the main ones. In the beginning, he didn't have anything about praise. My aunt is very into, when you feel appreciated or feel like someone notices the good about you, you'll want to keep working on that.
Sure.
He came up with something. He said that parents complain that he didn't have anything that talked about praising your children, but he came up with this concept called a positive I message. So he says that if you tell someone you're so good at drawing, or anytime it starts with you, it could put pressure on the child. It's not always an effective way of praising a kid.
So instead, you should say.
But again, telling them how they made you feel good. Like, I felt so good when you cleaned the kitchen.
So how would that apply to the drawing case? Let's say, like, I was really impressed by your drawing.
Yeah, you can say that. So it's
but isn't
more
saying like I'm impressed also sometimes a little.
Right, it could still give that pressure. So he was like, he was worried about that even praise could feel manipulative to a child.
And that's why he didn't come out with anything.
Right. But then in his later books, he has.
Got it. So what was the approach that your aunt?
No, she loves the positive I message, but she focuses a lot more on, noticing the positive and recognizing the things your child does that is good.
Gotcha. Wow. Amazing. And would you say that this style works with all ages?
Yeah, it's so cool to me. It could work with a very little kid, and then it can work with an adult child.
Interesting.
Because it's really relationship skills.
Right. Does it look differently with any of the ages, or?
I mean, it's the same concepts. And of course, as children get older, they can be more sophisticated.
Right.
But the thing that I found that is so interesting to me is that as I've used this language more with my children, they really communicate with each other. Like they use the I statements. They like automatically go to this method 3 conflict resolution. Like I watched them doing it. Like it became part of their language.
Wow. Mostly because of the fact that it just was so like second nature here in the home. Like
right.
And meaning, is it something that they're actively trying to do, you think? Or is just like, that's just like part of their.
I think it just became part of like, so
that's
it's
incredible.
Really cool.
That is so cool. That's very, very cool. Would you say does it change based on the gender, or no? Because it's just the same.
Right.
Wow. Amazing. Okay. Well, so can you share any, I guess, either like stories or like anecdotes based on, when you've been working with parents and, classes or whatever that you've given in the past that, have happened from this type of approach?
So, people always like share such like really powerful stories, and sometimes they're minor, but I still feel like they're so powerful. So a lot of times, especially with the active listening, there'll be like an aha moment where like it's cool when they come back and tell me a story like that. One story that really touched me, I remember someone told me that she told her daughter to pack her lunch and to remember to take a yogurt. She wanted her. And she came home and she looked in the refrigerator and she saw the yogurt, and she was so upset that her daughter didn't take it. But she was middle of taking this class. And so she went, she said she's not going to like get upset at her daughter, and she's going to try to listen. So she just started by saying, I noticed you didn't take the yogurt to school. And then the girl said, oh yeah, there was only one left, and I know Daddy likes that yogurt, so I wanted him to have it. And she couldn't believe that she almost was going to
You're
start
just
by
like gonna just like
screaming.
go crazy.
Right. So,
Wow. So there's that I statement. Wow.
and
That's
then
amazing.
someone else just recently told me how their son came home and he was so upset about a report that a teacher had given him. And so she said, her natural reaction would be to say, well, you have to do it anyway. Maybe we don't like things in life, but this is what you have to do. But she just did active listening. She said, oh, you're really frustrated. And he just kept talking about how frustrated he was. And she really just kept wanting to, but she just stuck to the active listening. And then she went to bed and he came into her room at like 11 o'clock and he said, I did the essay. And he showed it to her. So she couldn't believe it. Like he felt validated. She didn't fight with him or tell him he had to do it.
Right.
And then,
Wow.
but mostly people will tell me so many times that this really changed their perspective, like on even relationships in general with friends or, coworkers.
Right. This is not just a parenting
Right.
thing. I mean, this is great for parenting, especially
Right.
it's amazing for children to be able to teach them, like you said before, like
Right.
empathy and also modeling the right way to communicate
Right.
with one's spouse or coworkers, whatever it is,
Right.
friends, whatever.
Right. It's like realizing that, someone else's perspective is valid and important and you can let yourself see it from their perspective, and just being there and hearing their side is so, important and significant in developing a relationship.
Right. Totally. What would you say are the most common questions that you get when you're giving this over this whole entire parenting style in a course? Like what do people, what's like right away, people are like, wait, I don't know how to do this. What's the...
So it's interesting because when I first started doing it, my aunt told me she has 2 Haskamos from the Novominsker Rebbe and Rav Matisyahu Solomon, and I didn't understand why. I thought I'm never going to need that. But the one thing that really, like a lot of times will get people worked up is chutzpah. They'll say, isn't there a time when you say, you can't, it's never okay to talk like that. You can't talk like that. I'm not talking to you when you talk that way. So in this approach, even if your child says, you're so stupid, I hate you, you're not responding by saying, don't talk like that. Come back when you're ready to speak nicely. You're saying, you sound really angry.
Maybe I want to clarify for myself. In that type of situation, you should be saying, I feel frustrated that you said that to me.
So you could. If you want to say that, you could say, I feel really bad. Right. But
it's more like you sound really frustrated right now.
And like my aunt will tell me that a lot of times when a kid says something like that, they are filled with anger about there's something that was going on that sparked it. And a lot of times it might not be related to you. And if you don't give them validation to those feelings and help and give them a safe space to keep talking, you won't even get to what triggered it. And she always tells me so many stories about, once this boy came in the house, he threw his things down. He said, I hate everyone. You're so stupid. And his mother said, go back out and come in when you're ready to talk nicely.
Right.
Meanwhile, he had later she found out this whole crazy thing that he had been going through, that so many times when someone is talking in such an angry way,
right.
And if you can just say, imagine if she would say to him, wow, you look so angry, instead of keeping on throwing things, he'd probably start crying.
Right.
So
then you just feel like, yes, I am so angry.
Right.
And I can let the guard down a little bit. Right.
So people will say, but then how are they going to learn that it's not okay to, talk chutzpahdik? Or I was so careful how I talked to my mother. And she never told me, it's not okay to talk a certain way. You learn it from modeling and there's so many other times that you're going to learn how to talk respectfully to your parent when you're angry. And if the parent says, never talk that way, you're really building up more anger within the child. You're not really solving the problem.
Realistically, if you say to a child right in that moment, in the heat of the moment when they're upset anyways, a child has no ability at that time to really hear you out and being like, oh, you're right, I shouldn't be that way. Of course, I'm, next time before I speak this way, I'm going to be thinking that.
Exactly.
That's just not realistic. No child is going to think that way. No person is going to think that way when they're being if the way the child is interpreting it is being attacked for what they just did. They're just going to shut down.
Exactly.
So rather than shutting them down, you let them open up. Okay.
So sometimes, and especially some people will say, well, I heard in a certain sefer, and then I'll say, well, maybe, you don't agree with this style, but it does have the haskama.
So all the people's, the issues or the questions that people always ask is how do you deal with chutzpah?
That's one that almost always comes up in every.
Really? Wow. So, and according to this approach, the way you deal with chutzpah is by just saying the same approach of saying you seem really frustrated.
So in this whole approach, there's a lot of time for teaching, for really teaching your child, but it's not in the moments when your child is angry or you're in the crisis moments is not when you're doing your teaching.
Right.
So
meaning outside of the crisis moment, how does then one teach their child about chutzpah or the way, speaking properly to elders, parents, teachers, whatever it is?
So there's so many opportunities, in ways that are exciting and nice and modeling, like, you can tell stories or have discussions or show them what your values are. There's so many ways that children will learn, what your values are, you respect and how people act. And part of this whole method also is that your children in the end, they'll take on your values if they respect and appreciate you.
Right.
So,
right. And if they feel respected by you,
right.
they're going to want to take on your values more also. Right. I got you. Are there any points that we, let's say, I guess, haven't discussed within this parenting style?
There's something really interesting that my aunt always says, and I think about it a lot. And she tells me that, like, parents feel like their role as a parent is to correct their child. That if they see their child doing something wrong, they have to say something. And if they don't correct it, they're not being a good parent. But when
kind of like what you're just saying about chutzpah, like it's like, well, if I don't correct them, how are they going to know that they can't talk that way?
And that people don't feel compelled to notice the good things. Like it's not that same. You never feel that same, need to say, oh wow, like. But really, by noticing the things, always commenting or correcting or noticing the things the child is doing wrong, you're really working against yourself. Because you're helping the child see themselves as the kid who always leaves their hair messy or forgets their things, and they just kind of follow that role that they're, but by noticing the good and helping them see themselves as good and see the things they're good at, you're really empowering them. You're really giving them a gift, and you're helping them, keep focusing on those things themselves.
Wow. That's very strong. Very strong. Any, as we wrap up, any final message that you want to share?
Thomas Gordon says that the parent and child relationship has the potential to be the most powerful relationship that you'll experience in your lifetime. But that so many people spend years with so many resentments or anger or like have so many issues because of their relationships with their parents. And that, it's hard to work on or change things that are so different from what you're used to. But the work you put into it you'll be giving your kids a gift because, you'll be giving them such a great foundation. But even more so, you'll really be giving yourself a gift because you'll get this rewarding relationship that, you can't experience in any other relationship in life.
Wow, it's so true. And it's also not only yourself a gift and not only your children a gift, but you're going to give your grandchildren and their children.
Exactly.
Because like you said before, your children are already like just by second nature, just using that type of language, that's so incredible.
And it came from my grandmother. Like everyone talks about my grandmother and how she was as a mother. So it really,
that's
lasts.
Incredible. That's so powerful. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's amazing. It's really, it's so eye-opening and it's such a different way of just looking at every interaction you have with your child. And it's so powerful. And I see why it makes so much sense. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to all my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Jews Next Door. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. I'd love to hear your takeaways. Reach out to us. Reach out to me at yair@jenaleph.org, hi@jenaleph.org. You can check us out on the website. You could leave a question there. We'd love to be in touch. Please be in touch. Check us out on Instagram at Parenting the Jews Next Door. Hit me up on Twitter at yair_menshel. And we're on TikTok now too. We have some great content, a lot of really great insights into parenting, tips, parenting pointers, reaction videos, and quotes. We have a lot going on. We have a lot of articles. You want to check it out. Check it out at jenaleph.org. You won't be sorry you did. And I look forward to hearing from you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, make sure you subscribe and share it with your family and friends. Looking forward to another great episode next week.